You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast on BQN. We're here to showcase the films you probably missed, but should definitely check out. From independent and obscure to art house and absurd, each episode will gather, perhaps a cocktail in hand, to discuss it all. I'm your host, Mark, and with me today are Matt and special guest, David. How are you guys doing today?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. About a little barbershop.
That's also how the Book of Mormon
Oh,
starts.
is it really?
Well.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. It looks good though. Obviously, welcome, David. So good to have you here on our little party of Cinema Z.
It's nice to be here. It's my first time.
Is it your first time on a podcast?
Yeah. Put a little period on the end of that sentence. First time, period. I'm really excited though. I've always been intrigued and interested in podcasting, and I love films. So here we are.
You might get the bug, and we might bring you back. Let's see.
I would not be surprised and or upset by that at all.
Awesome. Well, Cinema Z, we like to start off going around and just sharing if we have a cocktail of choice for the night or not. But what y'all drinking?
I'll go first. I have recently been on a kick of pomegranate mixed with a seltzer of some kind, and I went with what I had available. So ginger seltzer with pomegranate, and it's super tasty.
Anything with ginger, you have me at ginger. Love it.
I've got a mixture of things. So I tried making a drink a few weeks ago called Witch's Brew, and I think the ingredients are rum, pomegranate juice, and pineapple, and ginger ale. But there's no ginger ale in this. I just put in some raspberry lemonade because I just didn't feel like putting ginger ale in my drink. So it's just rum and pineapple juice and raspberry juice and pomegranate. It's a weird.
It's slightly less witchy.
Slightly less. It's Witch's Brew Zero.
Well, listeners, originally my on theme cocktail was actually I was going to sit here and smoke some wacky tobacco while I was podcasting because I was like, oh, that'll be on brand. But I chickened out at the last minute because I was afraid. I love this movie so much. I was afraid to drool on myself. I didn't want to stare off into space and have you guys have to pull me back. So I'm not doing that during the pod. ... Instead. I did bring a cocktail, and I have whiskey, ginger beer, and a little lime, and I am drinking it out of one of those copper cups they usually reserve for, the Moscow Mules.
Is that like a Western drink? Is that a...
I don't know. Metal cup, for some reason, made me think of the Old West. You know, the cowboys hanging a metal cup on the back of their chuck wagon. I don't know.
It's very saloon or like trading post.
Yeah. Or it could be Russian because of Moscow. So I could be completely missing the boat there and just going.
But maybe I am Russian cowboy. Giddy up.
You're in disguise.
No one will ever tell. I am not 100% American.
Such a good spy.
As you say in your country, cheers, queers.
No.
Oh God. Okay, I'm done. Really done. I don't know where that came from. All right. Moving on. Have you guys seen any movies lately you want to talk about or mention? Anything on your screens?
So I saw 2 movies in the last 2 weeks. Like I said, I'm not going to speak about one of them. Ooh. But the other movie that I saw that I really enjoyed was called Origin. It's written by Ava DuVernay, and it is based off I believe the name of the book is called Caste. Listeners, please fact check me on that. Anyway, the movie is basically this woman's journey of kind of trying to redefine or find a new way to look at race, not through so much the lens of, I believe, color, but more the lens of caste, if I'm saying that correctly. And the main character links it through Nazi Germany, through America's history with segregation, and in India as well. I wish I could do a good job of explaining it. I will not do a great job of explaining it, but it's basically that's the journey, that's the arc, is that this woman is trying to find a through line, a connective tissue through these three different things in regards to race, but kind of looking at it as caste. It was well done. It was beautiful. It was hard to watch at times, especially with what's happening with our country right now. It's very appropriate. It's very necessary to see. I'm sure it's not still in theaters anymore, but if it is still out there wherever you are, listeners, I do recommend you watch it.
David?
Yeah, so I had to dig through my brain here to get this. I did go see Argyle recently.
Oh, cool.
Interesting film. I really enjoyed the fantasy elements of it. Obviously, it's probably not something that appeals to everyone in terms of like action or comedy or like screenplay or whatnot, but I enjoyed the elements of storytelling and the way that they used like sort of flashback scenarios to sort of build around someone's imagination of a specific style of person that they wanted to create a character out of. If you're interested in going to see it, or if you have already, or haven't already, I should say, it's basically about someone who's like an author and writes a character and a series of books about this person who is a spy
Oh,
and is a bit too closely related to like events that happened in their reality. And so they become intertwined in this worldwide mob sort of scenario. And it's very interesting. And Henry Cavill's hilarious. Bryce Dallas Howard is lovely. And Sam Rockwell, who is one of my ultimate favorite
I
people,
love Sam Rockwell.
just seems to just crush every role he's in and
Yeah,
find
doesn't he,
a way
though?
to like dance and blow everyone away.
Did
at
you
the
see
same
him
time.
in
It's just the
Moon?
perfect. Oh no, I didn't. I really want to see that though.
Oh, Moon's good because it's the Sam Rockwell show. It's essentially Castaway, but on the moon with Sam Rockwell. Like he's stuck there alone on the moon with just a talking robot, which is Kevin Spacey, and
Oh.
actually, not to give it away for the listeners, but the Kevin Spacey robot, I think, wants him dead. So, even if Kevin Spacey isn't your thing, he is playing a villain in this one, a villainous robot. So, there's that. I haven't been watching like a lot of movies. I did see Masters of Air. That's streaming on Apple TV Plus, and that is so good. It's the people that did Band of Brothers in the Pacific. They've gotten together to make this Apple TV Plus show. They've gotten another really amazing ensemble cast. The cinematography is incredible. The special effects are incredible. The story, you're learning about history. It's just totally worth watching if you're a film buff or a history buff or an action adventure buff. It's all of those things. So anyway, I recommend checking out Masters of Air. And if you don't have Apple TV Plus, sign up for a month or something and then cancel, whatever.
The way that Austin Butler has just taken the industry over the last year and a half, 2 years, has just been amazing, and I'm here for it. Also, it looks beautiful. It looks very aesthetically on point. I can't wait to watch it.
Gut wrenching. Like you really care for all these characters, and you feel for all these characters, and then when bad stuff starts happening to them in the course of World War II, you're like, "Oh my God, no! That poor guy. I was rooting for you." And then their whole backstory and who their girlfriends are, and it's like, oh.
We love a hero.
Yeah. All right. Well, this week, listeners, we are going to be talking about Dead Man. Dead Man is a 1995 American acid western written and directed by Jim Jarmusch. It stars Johnny Depp, Gary Farmer, Billy Bob Thornton, Iggy Pop, Crispin Glover, John Hurt, Michael Wincott, Lance Henkinson, Gabriel Byrne, Millie Abital, and Robert Mitchum in his final performance. This movie is set in the late 1800s and follows William Blake, a meek accountant on the run after murdering a man. He has a chance encounter with the enigmatic Native American spirit guide Nobody, who believes that Blake is the reincarnation of the visionary English poet William Blake. So, How about I go around to you guys on why you wanted to watch it, and then I'll do mine after. Matt?
I'm always here to add to my knowledge. And this movie, in terms of filmmaking, I watched an interview that you shared with me, Mark, and the way that the director went about making the piece was it watches like a play. There's something about this that is very much like a play. And specific for me, anytime that I was watching the movie, I kept thinking of Samuel Beckett in terms of the way that some of the cuts happen, some of the dialogue, the overall journey was very Beckett to me. But I say all this to say, I just wanted to watch this just to increase my knowledge. I'd never heard of this movie before until you shared it with me, and the fact that I don't know of many movies that were shot in black and white in 1995. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong, but for me, Sin City was like the first movie that I had seen in modernish times that was in black and white. I think that was like, what, 2004?
Sin City was a gorgeously shot film as well. That's another one where the cinematography is outstanding in Sin City.
Yeah, but I hadn't seen anything else really in black and white since that. So to know that there was something that came out in the 90s that was purposefully shot in black and white, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I think the idea of the black and white sort of grabbed my attention when I first had, learned of the film. And it threw me back to sort of like the film noir kind of idea that I grew up with my dad and watching Westerns and old films and things like that. And so like, it sort of brought me into that headspace of just like, I don't know, it's sort of like, it made me hyper fixate on the detail of the film. And it was really, really kind of cool to watch the different uses of like focal length and just like all of the detail in the landscape that they would show. But yeah, also Johnny Depp, mid 90s, super cool dude.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed his like character development from like super curious yet apprehensive like accountant on his way to this place that he has no idea what's going on. And then like in the end, like a beautiful sort of like full arc of his like mental and spiritual journey. Into his like ascension.
Like a phoenix, Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Really though, I mean, the director, when the director spoke about choosing that specific poet, I think that I guess he mentioned that poet was also someone that kind of broke down some of the conventions of religion, or didn't really believe some of those religious conventions that were, I guess, most of us are brought up with in one way or another.
And he was doing that as a poet, protesting through poetry in like Victorian era England. He was protesting the church,
which is so subtle, such a subtle move. And here we have this character, Johnny Depp, who is here to be, what is it, an accountant?
Yeah.
Is that the job? He's on his way to be an accountant, and as you said, David, he goes through this arc of, I think, kind of the accountant job is just like what he's supposed to do. Like, that's the thing that you have to do. I'm going to do this job. I'm going to do this.
And they set it up early on that he's kind of a loser. He had, this girlfriend, and she left him, and then Crispin Glover's character was just like, oh, she met somebody else, and he's like, no, he didn't, and he's like, yeah, she did. You poor guy.
But we see that journey, and he comes to, like you said, David, he comes to this place of being someone more full aware, someone more confident. It's always lovely. I mean, even with actors, with characters, they wear it in their body too. Like, you watch that less confident character go from hiding in their shoulders to their back being straight, and you see a little bit of that with this character's journey.
I love that. Not to skip too far ahead, but I love that line. Once he's been reborn, so to speak, into William Blake, the gunslinger, and he has that moment where he just like stone cold shoots the guy, and he's like,
twice.
He's like, I'm William Blake. Do you know my poetry? Pop, pop. It's like, oh yeah. So I think my journey to this film kind of similar to David, actually. When I was a kid, I was a big cinephile. I I've talked about this multiple times about going to Blockbuster as a kid and having the movie pass and all that. So I would watch all the weird indie stuff. That was my whole thing. But I also, when I was growing up, my grandfather lived at the house with us, and he was a huge Western fan. Okay. So my grandmother passed away. We went and stayed for summer at his camp out in the middle of the woods on a lake. My grandfather, myself, and he had a satellite dish, and he only pretty much subscribed to the Western channel. 6 or 8 of them. There wasn't just one Western channel. There was like Western East, Western West, this company's Western channel.
Whoa.
It was like all of the Western channels. And that's all that he had.
That's crazy. I didn't realize there was that many.
There was
Western
at that
channels.
point in time. But I would watch them with him. And so when I was in Blockbuster and I saw that there was this film and it was Johnny Depp, who, of course, like in the 90s, like I was like into Johnny Depp. I thought he was the coolest person on the planet. And he was in this Western, and it was like black and white. I was like, this is weird, And it had won a bunch of awards and accolades, and I could see that, on the jacket of the thing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I want to check this out. And I watched it, and it was like one of those things. It's like people talk about doing drugs. It's like I watched this film, and it just, my mind melted a little bit through cinema. I was like, what was this? It was an experience on a spiritual level, on a psychological level. It just like really messed with me, to the point where I actually bought a copy as a gift for my grandfather, who was really into Westerns. And I got a VHS copy. And I remember my grandfather, rest his soul, he's no longer with us, but I remember he saw the film, and his response was, Mark, I don't really know what that was. That was different. But I love the fact that he watched it. I love that I got my grandfather to watch it. I think he was used to the John Ford kind of John Wayne, Westerns, where the hero's the cowboy and they go and they battle the natives and whatever. And it's that kind of thing. But this was not that. I don't know. It's one of those films that my whole life I go back to. I think I told you, Matt, that I watched this film multiple times a week. I put it on before I go to bed. I just like the ambient sounds of the train and the dialogue. I can fall asleep to it. I'm usually asleep around the time they start shooting the buffalo, so it's like 10 minutes in or something. But anyway,
I will say part of what I really enjoyed, actually, and by the end of the film, was the crunchy guitar that just leads you. It leads you through the journey, and by the end of it, I mean, it's just I really appreciated the score, and even the rolling, like the credits as they roll, the music is just perfect. But it's very like anti-classic Western soundtrack, but it sort of ties in some of the elements of the big sounding like guitar, but it's very like almost mechanical and rhythmic and crunchy. And I really kind of like it, drew me in even closer.
So a little added trivia. I didn't include this in the end, so I'll just throw it out now. This is a good spot. Neil Young was specifically approached to do this, and the director, Jim Jarmusch, wanted him to do just sort of some guitar stuff, And Neil was like, no, I have this idea. I want to get a band together. We're going to do this thing. And he's like, oh, all right, blah, blah, blah. Cool, whatever you think's best, Neil, because he's taking cue from Neil Young. He's not going to argue with Neil Young. And Neil Young's idea was to get the 2 surviving members of Nirvana, because Kurt had just killed himself, like within the last couple of years or last year or whatever. So he wanted to get the 2 surviving members of Nirvana together to record with Neil to do this soundtrack. And so that was going to be the plan. And then at the last minute, Neil was like, wait a minute, no, I think it was better the first idea with just the guitar. But that's what almost happened, which is kind of a cool fun fact too.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Super interesting. That's actually cool.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm actually like probably, I wouldn't say it's a closet fan of Neil Young, but like I have admired his ability to write music. There was like a period of time where it was just like, for me, Neil Young is like one of the greatest songwriters and musicians. Anyways,
Matt, did you watch the interview where he was talking about Neil Young?
No,
I watched a
didn't see
bunch of
that.
the interviews about this movie before we recorded. I just want to get all the facts so I can give the information to the listeners. So Neil was talking to Jim Jarmusch about recording this, and they were at the recording studio, and Neil was like, I can't just sit here and do this without like seeing the film. Like, you got to put the film on here in the studio. And Jim was like, dude, it's gonna bleed into your audio. Like, I can't like show the film with dialogue and stuff while you're recording. Like, it's gonna show up. He's like, no, we'll be fine. And he's like, so anyway, Neil ends up leaving the room and going, like, to his trailer or something or what have you. And where the trailer was also where like a lot of the audio equipment was getting fed in. So Jim Jarmusch is sitting there with his audio engineer, and they're talking, and he's like, Neil Young, I can't believe he's going to try to do this with like the video. Like, it's going to bleed through. It's not going to be good, blah, blah, blah. And Neil comes back and says, hey, guys, I could hear every word you were saying, and it's going to work. Trust me.
Oh my god!
And so they were like, okay, we'll put on the video. And
I'm telling you right now, listeners, if you work in Hollywood, the mic
It's
is
hot.
always on.
Hot mic forever.
It is always on. Be careful what you say.
Listeners, if you do have a chance to check out the soundtrack, it is on Apple Music, as well as other streaming platforms. But you will hear in the soundtrack the audio for the film bleeded in. You can hear the clips.
Interesting.
It's great. I love it. Moving on to topic 2. Look out the window. And doesn't this remind you of when you were in the boat? And later, that night, you were lying looking up at the ceiling, and the water in your head was not that dissimilar from the landscape. And you think to yourself, why is it that the landscape is moving, but the boat is still? So, at any point during this film, did that particular quote make sense to you? And what did you think of the offbeat, non-formulaic approach to storytelling that was used in this particular piece?
I mean, again, for me, it was very Samuel Beckett, because I got my degree in theater, so that was like the way that I was coming at it when I watched this, because there was an element of I guess non-conventional storytelling or non-linear storytelling with this. And Beckett, I think, kind of has a tendency to do that in some of his dialogue, as well as overall just the questions of human existence, which is also very much, I think, a part of this movie as well. So when I heard that quote, I was like, I know I missed it. I gotta go back, and I know I missed it. But it makes me think of, and I hope I'm okay with doing this, but the end of the film, when we end up with Johnny Depp's character in the boat on the water. And
that's the point.
He's just, okay, good, I got it. But, so it came full circle. I got it eventually.
Thinking about that, for me, it's like, was the guy on the train, Crispin Glover, was his character ushering Johnny Depp to the afterlife, to the underworld? Is the train purgatory? Is it a whole allegory for that? I don't know. Ruminate. David, what are your thoughts on the previous question? And then if you want to answer that one, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I can sort of rope in both here. I, as a youngster, spent a lot of time on road trips, and I also would go camping in the Boy Scouts, and there were canoe trips and things like that. And so, like, the whole boat being still in water and land moving around you. I've actually been on a camping trip where I canoed the entire day, and I would lay down and like still feel like I'm on the water. And so the idea of the ceiling, like looking up and just like even just staring at the ceiling, I feel the water moving past me, and I'm just laying here still. It's such a weird sensation.
Wow.
But I definitely think that was a foreshadowing moment, and it was beautifully done, because like it's obviously a recollection. When you see it, you're like, oh, that was that guy on the train, the weird like prophet of sorts. It was really cool how it got to that point. And also his like looking out the window as he was like in and out of like consciousness and going to sleep and waking up, and something different would be around him. I really identified with that as a road
Yeah.
tripper, and like being on trains before. It just like felt like I just felt like that was a perfect explanation of that experience.
And I'm pretty sure, like back then, there were problems, like mental health wise, with the people that worked on those old steam engines that had to shovel the coal. That coal dust getting in your system
Yeah.
had to make you a little bit weird. So that probably contributed to him being a little off. I thought, but they got, I mean, perfect casting. Crispin Glover was in it for 5 minutes, and he had a very memorable role in the film. You thought about him at the end of the film. You're like, oh yeah, that guy. That's one of those things with this film where I go back to the film itself and I watch it again and again, and it depends on where I'm at in my life, what I'm going through. I pick on different threads because it's so layered, and it is its own. They very, very early from the first frames, from it's that, even that scenes before the whole movie properly starts. It's like the first few minutes, and then they do the credits after that. But it depends on where I'm at. I pick up on different things, and it means different things to me. Like the whole aspect of him being some sort of prophet or spiritual guide in himself. Crispin Glover's character even is an angel, maybe. I don't know. That isn't something that I necessarily thought of when I originally watched it, but has come to me in subsequent rewatches of like, hey, wait a minute, I'm seeing more to it now than I had before.
It's such a theatrical piece. I always say this all the time. If I know a movie is good, I feel like a movie is good when I know that I can see it on stage. And this, to me, is 100% a play. It's a stage play.
Yeah, the scenes
Even
are
just-
very segmented.
They're very segmented. The setting is not complicated. It's very Beckett in its style, in its the set. Like the settings are. I mean, there is like an attention to detail, but at the same time, we don't have
They're not distracting.
large landscapes. No, there are no large landscapes in the background. There's no, great horizon. We don't have people riding off into sunset. It's very you're supposed to focus
Well,
on
the cinematographer you saw in the did you see the interview about the cinematographer?
Yeah, when he said
Yeah.
he didn't want it to be, I guess, for one, Westerns are not his go-to genre, which I thought was very interesting, was that he decided to do this piece, but he's not really a fan of Westerns. But in terms of the way that he wanted to, I guess, shoot certain things, he didn't want the landscapes to be so distracting, which I guess is part of the reason why he wanted it to be in black and white as well, is because he, I think, wanted this non-descriptive, non-specific quality when it came to, I guess, the background, when it came to the scenery.
One of the things that stood out to me about the interview is that I learned that with working with a cinematographer, they would go to these locations, and the locations would be these gorgeous vistas. I mean, they went and filmed in some really beautiful places, but the cinematographer would see this beautiful mountain range or this beautiful shot and then flip the camera and show the other side. So their back was always to the gorgeous view while they filmed this film, which is a really unique way to do it and makes you think. It's like, no, there is that beautiful mountain, there is that, beautiful tree or whatever, but I'm going to focus over here, and you're going to see maybe just like some brush, or maybe just, whatever this thing is over here.
Some random woods, or, it's very, it's very minimalist. It's very Beckett in its style, visually, to me.
That gun will replace your tongue. You will learn to speak through it, and your poetry will be written in blood. Next topic, the story of Nobody in William Blake. So I want to ask both of you, this is another double-ended question here, but what did you think of Nobody's journey that you learn about in this film, of his life's journey? What did you think about that? As well as, what did you think about the character dynamic between William Blake and Nobody? So Nobody's journey as a whole, and then the two characters together. How did you feel about them?
I mean, so when nobody is explaining to William Blake, I guess, about how he, I guess, came across him initially as a kid through reading, through reading his poetry, I was a little thrown off at first because I was like, wait a minute, but he's reading his poetry, but he's a kid. So wait, how old is he supposed to be? And, so there's, to me, that was when the spiritual element came in, or maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. Was that mentioned earlier? That kind of element of him being a poet, or did that
No,
just get
William Blake was an
introduced?
accountant. He just happened to have the name William.
Then
And William Blake is a
okay,
world
so I did.
famous poet, but from at that
Okay, so
point, probably 100 years even before the film took place.
I thought it was very interesting that he has this journey where he's just inspired by this person's words, and so now he comes across William Blake again, Johnny Depp's character, and I'm gonna bring up The Matrix because it makes me think of The Matrix.
Everything makes you think of The Matrix.
I know, I can't. Well, it's just because it's kind of like, hey, you're the one, you're the prophecy. And even this person's journey of becoming something more than they are and not going with the conventions of life or what you're expected to do is very matrixy to me. So
So are you saying nobody is Morpheus?
yes, in a way, yes.
I can see the
Or
similarities. I can see it.
or more appropriately, Morpheus is nobody, because this movie
That's
came out in
true.
95 and The Matrix came out in 99. So I knew that, there is the stereotype of like the Native American character being, the spirit guide and that whole sort of thing. And initially there was a reaction of, oh, are we going here? But in terms of the whole piece itself, it is so justified and necessary. And to me, not going with the trope of this person of color being some sort of spirit guide. I don't know if that made sense.
I found it really interesting, and I really liked how the slow build of their friendship and like understanding of who each other is, like the identity of one another as they see them. I really enjoyed how they sort of took their time to like build that up. But when they first have their conversation around the fire and he's like, "My name is William Blake," the way that he reacts with like an identification and a conviction of like, "Oh, I know you deeply.
Yeah.
You've changed something in me," and like it's like a recognition of something massive in their life that nobody is just like. It's a really crazy revelation for him. And then in the end, close to the end, when they reunite, it's almost the same vibe that comes around when he's like, "William Blake, I'm about to kill you, but I know you and I love you and I miss you, and like thank you for coming back into my life." It's just like strange timing, obviously. I'm in a very
Romantic?
personal moment.
I mean, like,
but it's like he's so grateful to like see him again, and it was like a beautiful reunion, but also awkward timing. And then in the end, you should go watch the movie, but I will have to share this because I thought it was really poetic how it ended with him floating away and like the bounty hunter approaching quietly in the darkness in the back, and nobody realizing that this person is there, and they both shoot each other and die.
Yeah.
It's such a journey that like to me was like very poetic, and the personal relationship that built between the two of them over the movie was really cool. I appreciated it.
I mean, nobody definitely grows on you. When nobody left like a little more than halfway through the movie, and so I was genuinely upset that he was gone.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I want more of him. So when he gets reintroduced, not in the way that you would, normally see someone get reintroduced. Like, he's having sex in the woods.
I really loved it when he's like, "She didn't mean what she said," and he's like, "What do you mean?"
Yes.
You didn't understand shit.
Oh
my god.
Also, the quote, "That gun will replace your tongue. You will learn to speak through it, and your poetry will be written in blood," was so beautifully illustrated in the moment that it happened. And how that, I don't know, like, where it came from for William Blake to embody that in the moment, but it was...
The names?
It was like...
The names of the characters and the, using William Blake, the poet, as a substitute for this gunslinger, So that whole thing's cool in itself, but then also having the Native American friend be named Nobody, because when he enters the camp And he goes down and talks to those guys that are wackadoo, and they're like interrogating him. And they ask him, like, are you here alone? And he's like, I'm with nobody. I'm with nobody. He was with nobody. There was a lot of like tongue-in-cheeky lines based on both of their names that followed throughout it, that if you listen and you're paying attention, it's just like, oh, it made the hair stand up my arm. I'm like, oh, that's so good. That is so good. I love it.
I had to think about that quote initially because when the line, oh God, let me pull up the quote again. But it was, basically the gun replacing the words and the poetry being written in blood. Initially, thought that was like a negative prophecy, and I thought it was like also some commentary on the use of guns as well, because that's just where my mind went. But again, as we watch William Blake make this journey into becoming the person that he is, I said to myself, oh, okay, the poetry. Okay, this makes sense. This makes sense.
Something I also noticed in this watch, in particular this watch, I don't know if I caught this before, but the whole movie, nobody is asking William Blake, do you have any tobacco? Do you have any tobacco? Right? And he kept saying, no, I don't have tobacco. I don't smoke, whatever. And it's not to smoke. And I think the audience is led to believe it's to smoke, and he wants to smoke the tobacco, but it has nothing to do with that. This is foreshadowing at the very start of the film to the fact that he's trying to find these tobacco sprigs, or whatever they're called, twists, to put into his casket, his funeral casket. The whole point of that, because that's part of the ceremony. He needs it to prepare it with the boughs of, in the tobacco. He puts it in there to send off to his journey to the afterlife. And so as you go through the movie and he's asking him on this watch, I caught that. I was like, oh, it has nothing to do with the fact that he wants to smoke it. He's trying to help him prepare for the next journey.
I missed that all the way until the moment he says that. I was like, to me, it was like a hilarious, like repetitive joke that everybody's asking him for tobacco. And in the end, at the trading post, where he's like, "Do you have any tobacco?" to the clerk, it's just like, it was such a funny moment to me. But then in the end, also the symbolism of it being for the journey the entire time was a perfect closure of the tobacco.
Yeah. Also, like, random shout out to Alfred Molina. Like a younger Alfred Molina. I was like, hey, it's Alfred Molina.
So for me, Nobody's Story, I thought was so beautiful, and it was talked about but not shown on screen. Not really. They showed his abduction as a small child, and they talked about him getting shuttled around like a monkey, in a cage. And that's what they did to the native peoples here at that time. And he was paraded around and whatnot, and he ended up learning English through reading the poetry of William Blake. And William Blake, we've already mentioned this earlier on in the pod, was of his day kind of a rock star of poetry. He was a rebel, right? He was trying to change the world through his words. And you have this, very impressionable young Native American kid that's learning English this way and learning to go his own way through life, right? And it helps prepare him in a way for his journey that's ahead. For when he escapes and gets home, he's rejected by his tribe now, and he has to go it alone. And so really, William Blake, the poet, was his spiritual guide. And so the turn is that now all of a sudden, he is now going to be the guide for William Blake. And he makes it his purpose to be that because of all that William Blake and his poetry has done for him. Even if it's not the same guy, he believes that it is. He believes that it's a reincarnation. His spirit is within this man. And so he's taking care of him. And so I thought that was really cool. It was just so beautiful.
Yeah, he's the one.
He's the one. Let's see. There's so many good quotes in this movie. I could just read the whole script with you guys. I'll tell you one thing for sure. I wouldn't trust no words written down on no piece of paper, especially not from some Dickinson out in the town of Machine. You're just as likely to find your own grave. Along the journey, William Blake runs into a multitude of characters, each of which have their own drives that help paint the world of Deadman. Who are some of your favorite characters that we interacted with through the course of this film?
I'll say right off the bat, for me, it was, oh my gosh, his name.
Was it Iggy Pop's character?
No, Robert Mitchum
Oh, yeah.
as Dickinson. It threw me back to the John Wayne Western days where everybody shoots first and talks later. And it was just like a perfect embodiment of like the villain or like the person that you don't want to mess with. And it really sort of like put this quote in perspective when you see it happen. And then also, I can't tell who it was that was the person that greeted him when he got to the factory behind the desk. He was like, "You don't want to go in there." He's like,
"Was that John Hurt?"
But I do. And he's like,
"That wasn't John Hurt, was it?"
It was John Hurt. You're right.
Yeah, perfect callback for that quote though, and I thought it was really, really good. Among the other characters in the movie, I definitely enjoyed the camp scene when he wanders in and it's like, "I'm with nobody." That really, the entire dialogue there tickled me, and I really appreciated it.
That camp was pretty goofy.
Yeah,
that was.
Were they trying to like?
So
I think they were. They were trying to get a piece of Johnny. They haven't seen a woman in a very long time. Clearly,
who gets to top?
You had the last Philistine. This one's mine.
But there's a discussion. I mean, what I found interesting. I don't want to say that they were like a Greek chorus, but there's a discussion about what is a Philistine, and then there's the rumors about. No, we find out that what's his name? I guess like. Slept with.
Well, we're gonna get to that in director's cut.
Okay. Never mind.
I wanted to include that beautiful scene.
I'll be quiet.
Personally, I don't know. I love all of the cast of characters. I mean, in this film, you're experiencing a whole world, and you do that here. And I can really appreciate all of the actors, even Mr. Olafson, the nerdy guy that gets there before William Blake and takes his job. To me, he was a memorable character, right? And then the three gunslingers, right? And the black one, that's the kid. And one of the guys was such a racist towards him. He wasn't going to let him drink out of the same water that he was drinking out of. And he ends up shooting him in cold blood because of that. And there was all those side comments beforehand. But it's like each one of those characters you start understanding through the course of the movie and learning about them, right? And so they all have their individual arcs. And it's a dense film, but it's a beautiful film.
It is. Yes.
Yeah. I also got to mention Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop gets an award for this week's episode because he just played it straight. It was Iggy Pop in a dress with lines that you would typically give a woman, but him reading it just like Iggy Pop.
I've got to say, Iggy Pop, okay, listeners, I always bring the Star Trek connection. I think I mentioned it in the last pod, but Iggy Pop was indeed featured in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And this is the second time that I've seen Iggy Pop perform. And I have to say, sometimes when singers make the transition to film, it's always a little bit rough. Not always, but sometimes it is. And Iggy Pop is actually genuinely a funny man. He is a funny human being, and it was a pleasure to watch him in this role. Just my little commentary there.
Well, listeners, we have reached my favorite segment and yours, Director's Cut.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
So each episode we reenact some of our favorite scenes from the film without any preparation at all. So you guys can enjoy the silliness. The first scene I have chosen here is when nobody realizes that the person he's talking to is William Blake. And William Blake is very confused. So there is the part of William Blake and of nobody. Doesn't matter to me. Anybody want to play?
I mean, obviously this is with no preparation at all, like you said. So yeah, I'm down.
So, Matt, do you want to do one and David, you do the other?
Oh, I thought you were gonna do it.
I'll do the next one.
Okay. All right. I'll hop in. I could do nobody since it's very Morpheus.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be Blake.
Action.
The round stones beneath the earth have spoken through the fire.
What?
Things which are alike in nature grow to look alike, and the speaking stones have lain a long time looking at the sun.
The speaking stones?
Some believe they descended with the lightning, but I believe they are on the ground and are projected downward by the bolt. Did you kill the white man that killed you?
I'm not dead.
What name were you given at birth, stupid white man?
Blake. William Blake.
Is this a lie or a white man's trick?
No, I'm William Blake.
You are a dead man.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Is your name really William Blake?
Yes.
Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to sweet delight.
I really don't understand.
But I understand, William Blake. You were a poet, a painter, and now you're a killer of white men. You must rest now, William Blake. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night.
Cut.
I love it. I love it. It was beautiful. Oh my God, you guys did great. Thank you.
I really liked that scene too. When I first saw it, I was like, in my head, I felt such William Blake identification because at the same time, I was like, what?
This movie literally made me go out to a used bookstore and buy a very, very, very old copy of a William Blake book of poetry. It's so old that like the pages aren't all the way cut. So I kind of have to be careful with it because like that makes it, I guess, more valuable.
Right.
But that I started reading William Blake's poetry because of this film, and I started reading it and then reading the dialogue from nobody throughout his books of poetry.
I have a very personal connection with this as well. I'll share it at the end.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, guys, we do have another scene here, and this is a pretty interesting conversation between our hardcore gunslingers. So not the goofy encampment people, but these are the gunslingers that are originally hired to hunt Bill Blake. There is Conway, Wilson, and the kid. So I want to do this one, and I think I want to give myself Conway. He does have the bulkiest of dialogue in this one, but he's a weird one.
Doing your divaing your way into the part.
But anyway, you guys can, pick the other two.
Like, this is so funny that we're doing these scenes because, like, I really loved both of these, and I guess I'll be the kid in this one because I was just like, in the storytelling of the scene, just the way that he reacts, I was just like, wow, what have I gotten myself into?
I got this weird. Oh, listeners, before I get into it, I will a little bit of added trivia is a lot of the dialogue for this film was sort of improvised on the spot by some of the actors. Like they would just shoot out ideas of like, hey, I think my character would say this, and Jim was like, all right, say that then. And yeah, so there's some hints of that in this dialogue. It's just so bizarro, and you're like, where did these actors come up with these lines? That's weird. Anyway, but they all rolled with it, and they did a good job.
Action.
Ever wish you were the moon? Jeez, my Henry's cold. Oh, come on. My britch has been open like that how long? Only been riding a couple days together, but Jesus, one of you fellers could have mentioned that fact.
Unsaddle your goddamn horses.
Unsaddle your goddamn horse. Go on.
An Indian dug this fire pit.
Oh, an Indian? We weren't tracking no engines, Cole. I mean, hell, Dickinson didn't say nothing about us tracking no damn engines. I mean, the boy's name is William Blake. You know a lot of Indians named William Blake? I mean, howdy, Chief Billy.
Did you hear something?
Huh?
Did you?
No.
I guess it was nothing.
Hey, you know about Wilson?
What?
Do you know about Cole Wilson?
What kind of question is that? Of course I know about Cole Wilson. Everybody knows about him. He's a living legend.
We're gonna have to edit out the pause. You have to keep going. Stay in the scene. Stay connected.
Why did I add this scene? I should have smoked pot. He fucked his parents.
He what?
He fucked his parents.
Both of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Mother, father, both of them. Fucked them.
Oh.
You know what else I heard? After he killed him, he cooked them up and ate them.
Are you telling me he killed both?
I'm telling you, he killed them. He fucked them. He cooked them. He fucked him. He cooked him. He ate him. He ain't got a goddamn conscience. You understand what I'm saying? He just as soon slit our goddamn throats in the middle of the night as walk. Of course, someone your age. Jesus, if I was to put one in him, Johnny the Kid Pickett slays Cole Wilson.
Cut.
Wow. That hasn't happened yet on this pod.
No, it has not. I've just been thinking, listeners, I've never seen Mark catch a case of the giggles quite like this. This was a gift. This was a joy and a gift.
We've done
Thank
comedies here. We've done all kinds of films. I've never lost it like that. Something about that line of dialogue just strikes me in that funny bone. I don't know. It's just so shocking.
It is incredibly shocking. And when I was watching the movie, I had to go, okay. I said, wait a minute. I'm like, no, this is just a stupid legend. And then cut to later on, dude is just sitting there munching on what I think is like a deer leg, right? I'm like, okay, so he's got like a deer leg or some deer meat. This is the Wild Wild West, whatever. Okay. And then I see the skeleton of a hand attached to what I thought was a deer leg. And I said, oh no, he really does
I think
eat
it was
people.
the black kid. Sorry, Matt.
Oh my God.
I think it was the kid. Because he had just shot him in the previous scene.
No. Oh God. Oh God. No, you're right. Oh my God.
David, your thoughts?
No, I definitely, like I shared before, in the moment of watching that scene unfold, with I don't know, like the genuine curiosity of the kid, but also like, what kind of stupid question are you asking here? Of course I know who he is. He has no idea who that guy is, especially after the story unfolds with the whole parents and everything. But yeah, I was sort of taken aback, and when you notice that this guy's munching on somebody's forearm, it's like, well, wow.
They went
This
there.
is yeah, he's a living legend, but he surpasses his title.
This movie is like, it's surprisingly graphic in some moments. I mean, there's the one moment where oh God, what's his name? Where Wilson steps on the guy's skull, and like
It
you
just
see
pops.
we see some white meat, we see some blood coming through the nose. I was like, wow, okay.
Did not expect that.
Nope, I sure did not.
Me either.
This movie, it is a story of a spiritual journey between these two very different characters from different worlds. It's that. It is. It's also a gunslinger Western. It's also a black comedy.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's got so much happening in this film. And there's so many what the fuck moments like that.
And I gotta say that while I was watching it, I mean, because like you said, Mark, the movie has moments where it breathes. And then, I mean, the shift it's kind of jarring, but then I said to myself, oh, this is a comedy. Am I watching a comedy? It's a comedy. How did I miss that it was a comedy? And then like we have the next genre switch when William Blake finally makes it to I guess when he finally makes it to the village. And then it takes on a whole other like, you know, ethereal.
How beautiful was the village? An authentic Native American like village from the Old West, and the way that they built the like the door apparatus that opens through the beak of the bird and of solid wood. Oh,
cool. That was cool.
fuck.
Props to set design, concept design. Well done. Well done.
And that was a full
I thought it was
village. It
also-
wasn't random, like 2 or 3 people here and there working on clay pots or whatever. No, this was young children, old people, you know, all walks of life, a living, breathing place.
I thought it was really cool to see the final steps of Nobody and his redemption arc in that moment, recognizing the boat builder and like bringing William Blake into the village as like an insider and like someone he's just like he's sort of completed his character arc, and it's just a beautiful moment.
To him, it
I thought it
was
was really cool.
his
And
spiritual brother.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more scene that's not really a scene. I grabbed a couple of quotes, but this is some really cool dialogue from that tail end of the film, and I'm gonna cast this one.
Oh God, I hope I get it. Dun dun. I hope I get it.
Matt, would you be Nobody, and I would like to be Bill Blake? Okay.
Yes.
Action.
I prepared your canoe with cedar boughs. It's time for you to leave now, William Blake. Time for you to go back where you came from.
You mean Cleveland?
Back to the place where all the spirits came from, where all the spirits return. This world will no longer concern you.
Cut.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And, you know, it's so poignant, too, and true and honest. It's like any one of us, that's going to be the journey. At the very end of the day, that's going to be the journey where the things of this world will no longer concern us. The wars that are happening, anything. And so I love that line of dialogue. I love what it means, the significance of it. I love the way that the end of the film was shot was very, very touching, very beautiful. The whole scene on the beach and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, we have reached the rewrites portion. And so in this portion of the pod, I ask the co-hosts here, if you were in charge of making this film, what would you do different and how would you change it?
I find it really difficult to answer this question because as the film started, I mean, looking back on it, I feel like I wasn't ready for the way that the film would progress. Because when the film started, I was finding it hard to sort of like really get through the progression of like the train ride in itself. But as it went on, I really appreciated, like I shared in the beginning, the cinematography and the different aspects of lighting and focal length and things like that. So in terms of like, I don't know about writing, but like filming, in the moments of like comedy or like a new character development or focuses of interest, I really sort of in westerns sometimes appreciate a whipped pan where it like whips to some different character and their reaction, and I don't know, like that didn't really happen in the film, but I feel like that would have added sort of some of the elements of like classic western to me. I would have appreciated that. But
oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's probably the only thing I might change. Everything else really sort of builds beautifully, and I think it's a great film.
I mean, I think, especially after watching that interview and listening to the director talk about the way that he kind of made this film, or the way that he, I guess, somewhat envisioned it and how it was a collaborative process, to say that I would change anything just doesn't seem right, or doesn't seem to make sense, because this was such a collaborative piece. And I think in some ways a bit more of a free form in style, the way that was shot, again, because there was no use of storyboards, no use of shot list. So this really was like a, you know, in some ways a free form piece. So to say that I would change anything to make it better, I don't know. I think I could only say that if there was a purposeful structure used for the making of this film. And I think that wasn't the case here. So I don't think there's anything I would change.
Well, I feel this way about the film that probably Matt feels about The Matrix, where I don't know if it is a perfect film, but for me it is. I love it so much. It's very personal. I could watch it over and over again. Like I said, if I want to watch it to feel all the feels and watch it on like a emotional level, I can do that. If I want to watch it to laugh, obviously I could do that too.
Mm.
If I want to watch it to go to bed, I could do that too, because I've watched it so many times, and the soundtrack and just the sounds of the train can put me to sleep. So I can do that too. So on multitude of levels, I enjoy this film, and so I wouldn't change anything personally. Hats off to Jim Jarmusch. This was the film that got me into Jim Jarmusch, and if you haven't seen any of his other projects, please do. I think most enjoyable for like modern audiences would probably be one of his latest films, which was The Dead Don't Die, starring Bill Murray and Adam Driver. And who else is in that? Tilda Swinton, she's in it. There's Zombie Hunters. But yeah, it's quite a different film, but it also is shot in a very offbeat way, and the characters have really interesting dialogue, and that's also a really good starter film if you want to start getting into Jim Jarmusch. That's another one that I think is approachable for modern viewers. Standouts. So this section is our area to include things that maybe we haven't covered that you felt like mentioning about this film.
Okay, I'll go first. This is where I'm going to share the thing that I was going to wait to share
Cool.
until now. Again, thinking about the interview that the director had when he was talking about the use of William Blake and why he chose William Blake, the poet, and looking at the William Blake played by Johnny Depp and that character's journey to going from something that they were supposed to be to this new thing. I think for me personally, especially also with William Blake, I guess being someone who challenged all the conventions and the pillars of the church as well. I've been in a personal journey of my own in regards to religion and, the things that I was brought up in regards to God and faith and all that stuff. And it's definitely, it's definitely still a transition period. I remember elder people in church saying that you have to find your own relationship with God, your own relationship with whatever. And I'm definitely in a place now where those things that I was taught as a kid, or maybe kind of had drilled into me, I think just in terms of society in regards to religion and faith, that stuff is definitely, I think that veil has been lifted. And I'm very much personally in my own journey of finding out whatever that faith is, whatever that means for me, for myself, instead of what society overall, whether it was like images on TV or like, watching a pastor on a Christian network or whatever it was, all those things that were drilled into me. I think that stuff is starting to fall away and I'm starting to find my own thing. So looking at the journey of this character was a little personal. And I appreciated watching it. I think it was very necessary and very timely for myself. So thank you, Mark.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
There's nothing that I haven't shared yet that I would love to share now. I feel like I just sort of gushed everything that I had in the moment, and so thanks for letting me do that.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, I think I guess the same as David. Like as we went through, I get to mention the kind of the things that I enjoy about the film. So I think I'm kind of good on that as well. We can always move on to trivia. Yeah. Neil Young recorded the soundtrack by improvising mostly on his electric guitar with some acoustic guitar, piano, and organ as he watched the newly edited movie alone in a recording studio.
This is the final theatrical movie of Robert Mitchum, who played John Dickinson.
This movie contains conversations in the Cree and Blackfoot languages, which were intentionally not translated or subtitled for the exclusive understanding of members of those nations, including several in-jokes aimed at Native American viewers.
I love that. That's really cool.
Me too. I love that.
Yeah.
Nobody, Gary Farmer, can be heard several times to exclaim "Hookta" or "Hukta." According to Gary Farmer, it's not an actual Native American word, but slang for "what the fuck" or simply "fuck." Yay, Gary Farmer. Thanks for that.
The lines, "The vision of Christ that thou dost see is my vision's greatest enemy," that nobody says to the Trading Post missionary, are from the poet William Blake's The Everlasting Gospel.
Nobody tells William Blake, "Drag your wagon and plow over the bones of the dead." This is a passage from William Blake's Proverbs of Hell. They are also lyrics from Tom Waits' song, "How's It Gonna End?", which featured in several of Jim Jarmusch's movies.
The trivia section that I found for this film pretty much was 50% re-going through Gary Farmer's dialogue as quotes from William Blake. So I included a couple here, but literally like most of his dialogue in this film is all Blake poems, and I just love that. Anyway. This is really, for me, a really cool piece of trivia. Billy Bob Thornton's character's name is Big George Dracopoulos. George Dracopoulos is a musician and has produced music for the Black Crowes and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Jared Harris's character is named Benmont Tench, and Benmont Tench happens to be a member of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Growing up, I just loved Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And when I heard the name Benmont for the first time in this film, I was like, oh, like Benmont Tench from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And come to find out, that's how he's named. So, really cool.
Robbie Mueller's black and white cinematography was influenced by the work of photographer Ansel Adams.
Johnny Depp and Crispin Glover appeared in What's Eating Gilbert Grape in '93 and Alice in Wonderland in 2010.
So,
and when I saw Crispin Glover in this film, I immediately was like, yes, please. I want to hear everything you have to say.
I had the same reaction as you, David. It's like, Crispin Glover, he's great. I just love him. One of the film's consistent critiques is of the way in which life, and particularly animal life, was treated with a lack of respect and dignity by many settlers in the American West. At 8 minutes and 25 seconds, many hunters on the train start shooting at buffalo through the windows, despite the fact that there was no purpose to it other than to kill them, i.e., the skins and meat were not collected since the train simply passed them. Sadly, this practice of shooting animals from a moving train, simply for sport, actually occurred in real life on 19th century trains and is one of the less told facts of American history of the West. And that is one of the many reasons why the buffalo were almost extinct.
That was really deep when that happened on the movie. I was just like heartbroken immediately.
You can find photos online of just piles and piles of animal bones stacked up in the Old West that are taller than buildings. And it's disgusting.
Absolutely ridiculous. All for sport. All of that destruction for sport. Oh, after William Blake kills the two men inside the trading post, there is a sign shown on a door leading outside that says, "Work out your own salvation." This sentence is a passage from the Bible, Philippians 2, verse 12. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. In the film's context, the sign foreshadows the beginning of Blake's, i.e., his soul's final journey down the river to the sea and into the afterlife.
The trivia is in there, and I didn't even notice. I have not noticed that, so on a next rewatch, I'm going to look out for the sign.
It's funny, I did notice that, and I was like, wow, that's it's such a fitting moment for that dialogue to just be like a silent communication about the whole scene. Whether it be the person behind the bar selling tobacco or William Blake himself or the person hunting after him. It's all just
the guy selling the tobacco was a believable dick.
Yeah.
Alfred Molina.
Gary Farmer's character of Nobody returns in Ghost Dog, starring Forrest Whitaker. I love that. I think Gary Farmer had reached out to Jim Jarmusch and was like, I don't think Nobody's dead. I don't think he died. And Jim's like, no? And he's like, no, I think he's still alive. And so he put him in this other movie. And Ghost Dog actually takes place in the 90s. So 200 years after Nobody supposedly dies, he shows up on this rooftop in this other movie and makes a cameo, which is really cool.
That is cool. Come on, multiverse, universe building. I have to watch. I've never seen Ghost Dog.
Like it? added on to that trivia, Jim made a film after Ghost Dog and didn't include Nobody. And nobody called up, well, nobody. Gary Farmer called up Jim Jarmusch and said, hey, Nobody wasn't in that film. And Jim's like, yeah, I know. And he's like, you dick. Why wasn't he in the film? You got to put me in the film. And so I love that. And he's like, all right, I'll get you in another one. So at some point, he's going to show up again, hopefully.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, I mean, Nobody Lives Forever is just such a great, ironic, like,
Why
tag,
not?
obviously. Yeah, why not?
All right, guys. Well, it's time for final thoughts. And this week, I thought it would be fitting if we give out 1 to 5 twists of tobacco. Do you have any tobacco?
No, I've written I don't have any tobacco.
So I'm sort of debating on this, and if it's 1 to 5, I would say
You can do halves.
it's a solid 3.5 to 3.5 to 4. I really it sort of grew on me the longer I watched. I'm a very attention to detail oriented person, especially in films. Like, I notice the small things, like the sign on the door, or just like the camera work and things like that. It just really sticks out, and those things really came through for me in this. And I think that without those small things, it would have been like a 3 or less.
Yeah.
But I definitely appreciated that, and so I'd say 3, 5, or 4.
I'm gonna give this one 5 out of 5. Yeah.
I just died a little. I just died of joy. Okay.
Listeners, you should see Mark.
I'm clutching my pearls, literally. Well, listeners are going to be shocked at this point. I'm going to give it a 5 too. I got to. It's had a huge impact on my life. I've explored poetry through this. I've explored other cinema through this. It's been a launching point for so many things in my life. It's a touchstone. It's something I gravitate towards for just, like, I don't know, information and education and humor and a lot of different things. I gotta give it 5. And I hope that our listeners not only check out this film, but check out Jim's other film. Check out Gary Farmer's other films. If you haven't seen Smoke Signals, What Are You Doing With Your Life? Totally check that out too. Like, Gary Farmer is a treasure, and he's still around, and check out his movies. So, yeah, anyway. So, 5, and shout out to those guys.
What else can you listen to on the BQN? Replicate yourself a mug of hot chocolate and join Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin as they discuss everything and anything in the Star Trek universe on All Good Things. Boost yourself with an energy drink and join Davey on YouTube and Twitch for reviews and live streams of classic, cheap, and sometimes more recent video games on Bargain Bin Gamer. Brew yourself a pot of coffee and join Jeremiah to discuss Star Trek Voyager on The Captain's Couch. Mix your favorite cocktail and join Mark and Matt at Cinema Z to discuss the films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Pour a cup of tea, Earl Grey, hot, and listen to Stephen and Keith as they discuss the next generation of Trek on Galaxy Class. Get yourself something caffeinated and learn an interesting bit of history with Chrissy and Jason on History with the Szilagys. Have a bowl of Flo-Meek soup and join Thad and Chrissy and a guest to discuss new episodes of Star Trek as they are released on Infinite Diversity. Have something to sharpen your mind and put your Trek knowledge to the test with the Treksperts quiz. Take a bite out of something that didn't seem edible and join Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley covering all things in New Trek, including that show that is Trek in all but name, The Orville, on Union Federation. Get your Sunday brunch ready for The View Screen, a live weekly talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy with featured guests talking about all things Trek. Pour a glass of wine and spill some tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with an LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the Tea, Bev? And Patreon members get to pass around that green bottle of Aldebaran whiskey once a month on the round table, and they can listen to It's Green with Mark White and Amy's Math Moments.
Well, Matt, would you mind filling us in on what we're going to be watching next week?
Oh boy, I'm so excited. Okay. For the next episode, we will be watching a film called They Cloned Tyrone. They Cloned Tyrone is a film from 2023. It's an American science fiction comedy mystery. The film was directed by Jewel Taylor in his feature film directorial debut from a screenplay he wrote with Tony Rettenmaier. It stars John Boyega, Tiana Paris, and Jamie Foxx, who also serves as a producer. They are an unlikely trio uncovering a government cloning conspiracy. David Alan Grier and Kiefer Sutherland also appear in the supporting roles. And
you had me at David Alan Grier. Oh my God. Celebrity crush when I was like a teenager. Woo! He can still get it. I don't care.
David is in this movie for 15 minutes and he has me rolling
Nice.
on the floor.
Isn't it streaming? Is it streaming on Netflix?
It should still be on Netflix. I think it's a Netflix. It came out on Netflix. So,
well, we would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also send your thoughts to @CinemaZPod on Twitter and BlueSky and let us know if you'd like to recommend a film. And I think, Matt, are we also going on to, what is that other platform that we're joining now? I don't know. What's it called? Discord?
Are you talking Discord? Yes, we are moving to Discord.
Yes, so the network has a Discord now. So many of the hosts will be participating. I don't know when I'm going to dip my toes in. Matt, I don't know if you participate in that, but I don't know. The network's there. Yay, Discord. Happy to be there.
Yay, Discord.
All right. So, Matt, where can people find you when you are not recounting the story of Goldilocks around a campfire while wearing a dress?
Well, when I'm not doing that, you can find me doing that on Drag Brunch Sundays.
Hey, girl.
No, but when when I am not doing that, you can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube on @1701BLERD. I have a web series about a queer black nerd that sees his life like a Star Trek episode. And my third episode is almost done. I keep talking about it, but I sent it to my musician and he's going to have it to me at the end of the month. So keep an eye on it for March. So, David, where can people find you when you are not in a canoe, just riding the waves looking up at the sky?
Hopefully not dead.
It's so peaceful. Hopefully not dead.
Yes, ideally not dead when this has happened.
So I think on every platform I am at the Dinius, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, BlueSky, even I think my Xbox gamer tag is at the Dinius or something like that.
Nice.
So if you're a social gamer, find me there. But yeah, I don't have any other contributions as of yet, but check me out when I do at the Dinius. It'll be tagged there for sure. Mark, where can people find you when you're not asking everyone about, do you have any tobacco?
Do you have any tobacco?
but really, do you have tobacco? Do you?
No?
For your journey.
Well, the only tobacco I be smoking is the wacky kind. And do you have any of that? Anyway. Well, when I'm not doing that, and I'm not doing that on the pod this week, when I'm not doing that, you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook page. You can also find me on BlueSky at MW207. And now, this week, I'm also on Xbox at MW207. I wasn't going to share this, but I guess I'm going to now because David brought up Xbox. I got a free Xbox X, like the new one.
Let's go.
And so I got a game. It's like a Star Wars game. I know, different franchise from the norm, but I'm loving it so far. And I already texted David about it.
I have to know. I mean, it's I know we're short on time here, but you have to text me and tell me how you came in the possession of a free, state-of-the-art, up-to-date Xbox. I need to know the tea. How did that happen?
They just gave it to me.
He traded some tobacco for it. That's how
probably. You're right, David. It was probably traded.
We moved into this new house, and Verizon was like, hey, we're going to call this a new setup, even though you're an existing customer, and we're running a promotion. You get a free Xbox with a new sign-up. Okay. And they mailed it to me. They gave me that and like a couple $100 on a gift card.
Wow. That's
Oh my
amazing.
god. Come on, swag.
Thanks,
I'm
Verizon.
moving pretty soon too. Hey Verizon, I'm moving soon too. Let me see what's going on.
Like, Verizon, if you're listening.
Oh, shit. Well, please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and written review because that helps others to find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Amy Nelson and Davey Willett. Special thanks to Lars Marquez for original show art. The opening and closing music of this podcast is titled Dancing Dead and was provided by Kensa from the Free Music Archive, providing royalty-free music for content creators.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind on Facebook so you can enjoy its stream, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussions of the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch the event.
Thank you for listening. We hope you'll tune in next time.
Bye!
Mic drop from David. Bye! That'll work.
Oh, man.
I try to write with all the central characters with already an actor that I would like to imagine being in that character, and I've been very lucky to usually, almost always, get them. So I've been very lucky, but I really try to think of an actor that I could collaborate with, but that I can imagine embodying this character. So I try very hard to have the actor already in mind. And not, at least for all the central characters, for sure. And in this case, I had seen Gary Farmer in a few things, and I wanted Gary Farmer, and I wrote this for Gary Farmer. And then I got a number to call Gary Farmer. He lived up in Canada, way off the grid in the middle of nowhere. And I said, I'm Jim Jarmusch. You don't know me, but I know your work. I wanted to send you this script that I wrote and see if you'd be interested. And he said, I don't like reading scripts, man. I'll tell you what, why don't you come up here and tell me the story? I'm like, okay. What do I do? Okay, you fly to Toronto, then you got to rent a car and drive 4 hours and the blah, 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 So I get the instructions like, well, when can I come? I don't know, whenever you want. Okay, I'm going to come the day after tomorrow. I'm going to get there. I'll call you. I said, well, okay, if you don't get me by phone, though, just drive here. I'll be out in the woods or you'll find me, So I find Gary Farmer in the middle of nowhere, 5 hours north of Toronto, I don't know, in the middle of the woods, and in a house that was off the grid and really interesting. And I tell him the story, and he says, yeah, let me think about it. Hey, man, it's too late to leave now. It's late at night. You can sleep over there on the floor there, and I'll make you breakfast. How's that? It's like, okay, cool. So the next morning, I'm there with Gary Farmer, and he's like, yeah, so I thought about your story, and, well, let's do it. So I'm like, all right. So I get in my rental car. It takes me a day to get home, But it made me love Gary Farmer even more. That's just what he's like, and he is like nobody. And this thing about Pirandello, I don't want to kill them. I was so sad that nobody gets killed in the end of this film that I brought him back in Ghost Dog briefly. I brought him back in another century because I didn't want to believe he was gone, And I saw him recently, and he's like, so when am I going to reappear? And I said, I didn't put you in this film I have that's just coming out now. And he said, I know you didn't. And you know what? That's fucked up.